Chapter 35 The Boy and the Blackout. The cold metal of the fence bit into my palms as I leaned against it, staring at the screen in West's hands. The boy moved across the grainy footage like a shadow dripping through light, effortless, predatory, beautiful. But it wasn't his face that stopped my heart. It was the smile. I knew that smile had bled for it, had killed to forget it. The camera trembled as the operator fled, but the boy didn't rush. He sauntered, like a wolf who had already decided you weren't worth the sprint. His black boots splashed through pools of something dark, something that might have been blood but was too viscous, too wrong. And when he looked up straight into the lens like he could see me watching, the breath fled my lungs. "He's alive," I whispered, not to West, not to Riven. Not even to myself, to the ghost clawing its way up my spine. West was staring at me, confusion slicing across his face. "You know him." I closed my eyes, tried to steady the riot pounding against my ribs. When I opened them again, I felt ancient, older than the years I'd lost. "His name was Cassian," I said hoarsely. A name I hadn't spoken since the night I'd buried it in the ash and blood of the first massacre. He was the first. Riven leaned casually against a bent metal post, twirling a knife between her fingers. "The first," she echoed, voice teasing, but her eyes sharp. I nodded. "Prototype version 0.1, the one they broke before they learned how to build us better. The one they abandoned in the dark with all his rage, his hunger, his monstrous, lonely hope." West looked between me and the screen, horrified. "But if they left him to die, they didn't. I cut him off. They trained him differently." Riven grinned around the edge of her blade. "Oh, sweetheart, they didn't train him at all." She tossed the knife into the dirt with a casual flick. "They unleashed him." I pressed a hand to the scar on my side, the one that never fully healed. A gift from Cassian. Not when he hated me, but when he loved me. They set him free inside the blackout zone. I said, the words tasted like poison. Let him grow wild, untouched. Fed him desperation, fear, and violence until it was all he knew. I could still hear the static hum of the blackout walls, the ones they built to trap him inside. Still smell the iron tang of the children who never made it out. "He's coming," I said flatly. I wasn't asking. I wasn't guessing. I knew, because somewhere deep in the mangled, engineered code that made up my bones and blood, Cassian was still tethered to me, and he was pulling the chain. West's hand brushed my arm, hesitant, grounding. "We'll stop him," he said, fierce and stupid and good. It almost broke me the way he still believed. Riven snorted. "Stop him." She crouched down to retrieve her knife, twirling it once before sliding it into her belt. "Darling, you are the only thing that could ever stop him." She winked at me, cruel and glittering. "Or the thing he'll burn the world down to get back." The flames behind us crackled louder, a funeral pyre for the lies that once kept me safe. Ahead, the night stretched out, endless, hollow, and hungry. And somewhere in that darkness, Cassian was waiting, smiling. The end, or the beginning. As the storm settled and Riven stood in the silence, she realized that her journey was far from over. The storm might have been tamed, but it was still part of her, always lurking beneath the surface, waiting for the next time it would rise, and she would be ready. And in the stillness, I heard something I hadn't expected. Cassian was breathing, hard, strained, like he had been holding his breath for too long. I turned to face him, the shards of glass now glowing softly in my hand. He was crumpled to the ground, his golden eyes dimming, his body shaking as if it could no longer sustain the fire within him. "You," he gasped, his voice strained with exhaustion. "You broke me." I stepped toward him, slowly, carefully. There was no more fire, no more destruction. There was only him, only us. "I didn't break you, Cassian," I said softly, kneeling down in front of him. "You did this to yourself for a moment." Neither of us spoke then, in a voice barely more than a whisper. He said, "Do you still hate me?" I reached out, my fingers brushing against his. "No," I said. I never did. The silence between us stretched, and then the world finally began to move again. Chapter 33 Blood on my hands. The plan was simple, in theory. Walk into the first facility, burn it to the ground, leave no survivors. Riven spread the blueprints across the dusty table. Her finger traced a path through the halls like she was playing a game. "Security's been doubled since you escaped," she said. "Biometric locks, reinforced walls, kill zones. They think they untouchable." Her smile was sharp. "They're wrong. I leaned over the plants, the shadows stretching around me like they belonged there. They don't know what I've become, I murmured. West flinched slightly at the edge of the room but stayed silent. Good, he was learning. You'll go in through the east wing, Riven said. Take out the generators first, black out the whole place, and after that? I asked. She shrugged. After that, unleash hell. I should have felt scared. I should have felt something. But the old Mia, the one who's second, guessed herself, who clung to scraps of humanity. She was slipping away with every breath. Now there was only the hunger, and the hunger wanted blood. West finally spoke. You don't have to kill everyone, he said quietly. There are good people there. Scientists who didn't know what they were part of. I turned my head slowly toward him and smiled. Collateral damage, I said sweetly. He looked like he might be sick. Riven watched the exchange with a spark of amusement. She didn't intervene, of course not. She wanted me ruthless. She was counting on it. The black SUV still roared through the dark as we approached the facility. I sat in the back seat, rolling my new powers across my skin like liquid fire. I could feel the cameras scanning the perimeter, the soldiers' heartbeats behind the gates, the fear, the arrogance both tasted delicious. Remember, Riven said, glancing at me through the mirror, make it loud. I leaned back, cracked my knuckles, and smiled. Loud is what I do best. The first explosion ripped through the eastern generators in a bloom of fire and smoke. The entire compound went dark, alarms shrieking in protest. Panic poured into the night air. I moved through the chaos like a shadow, faster than their eyes could track. One guard barely had time to scream before I crushed his throat with a flick of my fingers. Another dropped as I drove my knee into his chest, ribs cracking like dry twigs. The walls blurred past me. Bullets ricocheted off the air around me, slowed by the strange warping of my energy field. I was untouchable, unstoppable, a nightmare they could not wake from, somewhere behind me. West and Riven followed. Slower, careful, but I didn't wait for them. I didn't need them, not anymore. I reached the Denner Labs, the place where I had been built broken and betrayed. My pulse roared like a drum. My vision tunneled into a single burning point. The scientists screamed as I crashed through the glass doors, blood splattering across sterile white floors. One of them, a woman with shaking hands, dropped to her knees, begging. I hesitated just for a breath. A flicker of the old Mia, the girl who might have spared her, whispered, "Don't," but the new Mia. She smiled and turned away. Mercy was weakness, and weakness was dead. Bend me, fire swallowed the lab, and the screams faded into silence. Outside, West grabbed my arm. "Mia, stop," he shouted over the roar of destruction. "You're not like them." I looked at him, really looked. And for the first time, I realized something bone deep and final. I wasn't like anyone anymore. I was something else. Something they made, something they tried to bury, something that had crawled out of the grave hungrier than before. I yanked my arm free. "They should have let me die," I said. And I walked into the fire without looking back. Chapter 27, Bloodlines and Betrayal. The room crackled with tension like a storm brewing just beyond the cracked walls. West's gun was steady in his hand, aimed squarely at Sabrina. But she didn't flinch. She didn't even blink. She knew she had already won, or at least she thought she had. "You want me," I said, my voice sharp as broken glass. "Then take me, but leave him out of it." West shot me a look. "Don't you dare," but I held firm. My heart was pounding, my palms slick with sweat. But I couldn't let her see me break, not now. Sabrina tilted her head, her smile infuriatingly calm. "Oh, Mia, you still don't understand. This isn't about taking you." She stepped closer, the heels of her boots tapping slow, deliberate beats against the floor. "This is about awakening you." My breath caught. "What the hell are you talking about?" Sabrina laughed softly, like I'd asked a naive question. "You think you're some innocent player caught in a war between monsters." She circled me now, a predator stalking her prey. "No, darling. You were bred for this, your mother. She didn't just disappear. She chose to leave you behind. Because she knew what you were becoming." Wes tensed beside me. "Don't listen to her," he hissed under his breath. But I couldn't not listen. Not when every word felt like a key turning in a long locked door inside my mind. Sabrina's voice dropped, like she was telling me a secret meant only for me. "You're not the victim, Mia. You're the weapon." I staggered back a step, the weight of it almost physical. "No, you're lying." Her smile twisted into something crueler. "Am I?" Then why do you think you survived every test, every betrayal, every assassination attempt I threw your way? Ordinary girls don't survive the things you've lived through. You are not ordinary. You never were. The room blurred at the edges. Memories flashed in my mind. The impossible instincts, the way I always knew where to run, how to fight without ever being taught. The whispers from my mother in the dead of night, training disguised as lullabies. You'll be stronger than me one day, Mia. Had it always been a plan? Had I been engineered to become this? West stepped between us now, his voice raw. She's trying to break you, that's all she does. She destroys people from the inside out. Sabrina laughed again, low and vicious. Sweet West, always playing the knight. Tell me, darling, if you knew what Mia was capable of becoming, would you still be standing there with that gun pointed at me? Or would you be aiming it at her? For the first time, West hesitated. It was a flicker, a breath, but I saw it, and so did Sabrina. She clapped her hands once, slow and mocking. See, even your precious West doesn't fully trust you. The betrayal cut deeper than I wanted to admit. But this wasn't the time to fall apart. It was the time to decide. I turned to West, my voice steady, despite the chaos inside me. Do you trust me? His eyes locked onto mine, searching, fighting, choosing. Finally, he nodded. Always. Sabrina clicked her tongue. Such loyalty. It's almost touching. Before she could say more, West moved, fast, precise. He fired not at her but at the laptop, shattering the hard drive and the only leverage she thought she had over us. Sabrina's expression darkened instantly. You shouldn't have done that, she said coldly. No, I said, stepping forward. You shouldn't have underestimated me. I launched myself at her, every lesson, every instinct, every dark part of me snapping into place. We collided, a flurry of fists and fury, crashing into the table, the walls. Sabrina was trained, lethal, but so was I. And for the first time, I realized the terrifying truth. I wasn't just fighting her. I was becoming her. Blood slicked my knuckles. She laughed, even as I pinned her, even as West trained his gun on her head. You can kill me, she gasped, her lips split and bleeding. But it won't change what you are. I tightened my grip around her throat. I know, I whispered, and that's exactly why you're going to wish I killed you. Chapter 45. The heart of the storm. The darkness inside the ancient structure was suffocating. A thick, inky blackness that seemed to devour every ounce of light. I could barely make out the outlines of my companions, their forms faint shadows shifting in the oppressive air. The ground beneath us seemed alive, pulsing with an energy I couldn't understand, and every step felt like we were sinking deeper into something that wasn't entirely of this world. We need to keep moving, Cassian whispered, his voice barely cutting through the heavy silence. Stay close. I nodded, but my heart was thundering in my chest. The further we went, the stronger the pull. It was like the very walls of the structure were closing in, and I could feel something ancient and powerful watching us from the shadows. The air grew colder, and an unnatural chill crawled up my spine. It felt as though the very breath in my lungs was being stolen from me, leaving me lightheaded. The storm outside, the one that had been raging just moments ago, seemed to have shifted. The wind howled with an unnatural fury, but it was muffled now, as if the storm itself had been swallowed by the structure we were inside. Then I felt it, a shift in the air, a pulse, something alive. Stay alert, I said, my voice low but firm. We're not alone. Riven, who had been uncharacteristically silent until now, spoke up, her voice barely more than a whisper. I told you, it's not just the storm, it's this place. It's waking up. I turned to her, trying to make sense of what she was saying, but she was staring ahead, her face pale, eyes wide with a mix of fear and something darker. Something older, there was no denying it now. Riven wasn't just uneasy about this place, she was terrified. Riven, Cassian said, his voice urgent. What's happening? What do you mean, waking up? Her eyes locked onto mine, and for the first time in days I saw vulnerability in them. She wasn't just hiding from us, she was hiding from whatever lay within these walls. This place, she whispered again, isn't just a relic of the past. It's a tomb, and we're the ones who've been invited to wake it. A cold chill wrapped itself around my heart. Her words didn't sit right with me, but there was something in her tone, a note of finality that I couldn't ignore. Whatever was here, it was far beyond anything we had encountered before. We've come too far, I said, trying to steady my nerves. We can't turn back now. Riven didn't respond. Instead, she took a step forward, her face set in a grim determination. She was facing something personal, something from her past. "Then you're already too deep," she said softly, barely audible over the low hum of the structure. "And there's no turning back." We walked on in silence, the weight of her words hanging between us, until the darkness ahead began to part, revealing an open chamber. It was vast, larger than any room I had ever seen, with walls that stretched into shadowed heights, disappearing into nothingness. The air here was thick with a presence I couldn't name, but I could feel it in my bones, in my very soul. It was alive, hungry, waiting for something. Chapter 34. Monsters make monsters. The fire swallowed the facility hull behind me. Orange and gold danced across the night sky, a pyre for the girl I used to be. I didn't turn around, didn't flinch, didn't mourn. I only walked. West caught up to me at the perimeter fence, breathless and furious. "You're burning everything down," he shouted. "You're becoming exactly what they said you were." I stopped, slowly turned. "Good," I said. The word cracked like a whip in the cold air between us. If he was expecting remorse, he would choke on disappointment. His hands curled into fists at his sides. "You're better than this," he said, quieter now, almost pleading. I tilted my head, studying him. Was I? Or was that just another lie someone told me to make me easier to control? Riven sauntered toward us through the smoke, her leather jacket glinting with embers. "You still don't get it, do you?" she said to West, her voice full of lazy amusement. "You think she's the same scared little girl you knew." She reached out and tapped my temple lightly. "She's not." Well, made sure of that. West's face paled. "What do you mean?" Riven grinned. "Did you really think they just found her? Some random orphan with random powers?" She laughed, low and cruel. "They built her, pretty boy." The ground seemed to shift under my feet. "What are you talking about?" I demanded. My voice cracked, but I stood my ground. Riven's smile sharpened. "You weren't born, Mia. You were engineered, grown in a lab. Enhanced, trained to be the perfect weapon." She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper only I could hear. "You were never human to them. Never even a person." My heart thudded painfully. "No," I said. "No, I had memories. I had implanted memories," she said casually. "To keep you docile." Her eyes glittered. "They put dreams in your head like coins in a jukebox. Mia, push a button, make you dance." I stumbled back. Everything inside me, every thread holding me together, frayed at once. The small, desperate hope that somewhere inside I was normal, real, loved it, crumbled into dust. West reached for me. "Mia, listen to me," he said urgently. "You're still you. You can choose who you are." But I shook my head. He didn't get it. He couldn't. I wasn't someone. I was something. And maybe it was time I stopped pretending otherwise. Riven clapped her hands once, sharp as a gunshot. "Enough therapy hour," she said. "We have a bigger problem." She tossed a black tablet at West. He caught it awkwardly. The screen lit up footage from another facility, this one untouched by fire. Inside, something moved. "Something worse. You're not the only experiment that got out," Riven said. Her voice was grim for once. "And this one didn't just survive." She smiled, a thin, cruel sliver of a thing. It thrived on the screen. A figure stepped into view, tall, dripping in shadows, eyes like molten gold locked onto the camera, and smiled. A chill slid down my spine, because somewhere deep in my broken, engineered bones, I recognized him. Chapter 37. The Price of Fire. The ground beneath my feet trembled, as if the earth itself was trying to swallow me whole. Cassian stood in the center of the wreckage, his golden eyes flashing like lightning, illuminating the chaos around us. "You've always been so predictable, Mia," he murmured, voice low and smooth like velvet over a blade. "I knew you'd come for me. I always knew you'd come back." I felt the weight of his words settle like a curse on my chest. The worst part. He was right. No matter how far I ran, no matter how hard I tried to forget, the pull of him, of us, would always drag me back into the darkness. Riven was already moving, fluid, dangerous. Her blade flickered in the dim light, dancing with a deadly grace. West, on the other hand, stood frozen for a moment, his body locked in a stance that said he was trying to process the sheer force of Cassian's presence. But I didn't need to think, I just acted. "Cassian," I called, my voice firm despite the pounding in my chest. He turned to face me, that twisted smile never leaving his face. I don't want to fight you, I said. Though the words tasted like ash in my mouth. He cocked his head, almost intrigued. You really think you can stop me, Mia? His voice held no humor, only the cold, harsh certainty that crushed everything in its path. Before I could respond, the ground beneath us shattered. An explosion of black smoke and fire rose from the crack in the earth, twisting like a living thing. The sky above us flickered like the world itself was on the verge of breaking apart. I barely had time to shield my eyes before the blast hit. The shockwave sent me stumbling backward, but I didn't fall. I couldn't, not when Cassian's laughter echoed in the ruins like a haunting refrain. See, Mia, he called, his voice cutting through the smoke and flames. This is the world you left behind. This is what happens when you abandon the fire. I pushed myself to my feet, my hand shaking as I wiped blood from my lip. My side screamed in protest, but I ignored it. The last thing I needed was to fall apart now. West grabbed my arm, his grip tight, his face pale. We need to move now, I nodded, but my eyes never left Cassian. He was circling us like a predator, his gaze heavy, predatory. The flames seemed to gather around him, flickering with a life of their own, dancing at his feet like willing servants. The ground rumbled again, but this time it wasn't just an earthquake. This was something else, something darker, something alive. Cassian had broken the world, and now he was using it to tear us apart. Riven cursed under her breath, shifting her stance as the ground cracked open further, swallowing chunks of the city into the abyss. We can't hold him off like this, she shouted. We need to get to him before, but her words were cut off by another roar of fire. Cassian's hand shot out, and the flames surged toward us, an inferno of hunger and rage. He was controlling it, bending it to his will. My heart raced as I felt the heat of it, a storm of fire rushing toward me too fast, too much. I threw myself to the side, pulling West with me. But Riven didn't move fast enough. The flames hit her, the force of them swallowing her whole. I screamed a raw, guttural sound as she vanished into the firestorm, her body a silhouette against the blaze. No, I shouted, my pulse pounding in my ears. My whole body ached with the need to move to save her, but the heat was too much. I couldn't even see her anymore, just the flames. West grabbed my arm again, pulling me back. Mia, focus. We need to stop him. I turned to face him, breathless, hands shaking with the rush of adrenaline and fear. We have to save her. But West's eyes were hard, his jaw clenched. We can't save anyone if we don't stop Cassian. Now, I felt the weight of those words press down on me like 1,000 pounds of guilt. Because he was right. Riven wasn't the only one at risk anymore. I turned back to Cassian, standing at the center of the storm, waiting for me. Enough of this, I said, voice raw with emotion. We're done here. Cassian chuckled darkly, the sound echoing around us. Oh, sweetheart, we're just getting started without warning. He raised both hands and the flames surged again, thicker, wilder. And this time they were aimed straight for me. I didn't hesitate. I ran. West followed close behind. And together we sprinted toward the heart of the chaos, toward Cassian, toward the heart of everything that had gone wrong. We were running out of time. The fire chased us, roaring and relentless, but Cassian was right there, too, standing in the flames. Untouchable, his eyes burning with a madness that made my stomach twist. And then, in the middle of the chaos, I realized the truth. Cassian wasn't just trying to burn the world down. He was trying to remake it, and we were the fuel. Cassian's jaw clenched, but I placed a hand on his arm to calm him. The inevitable doesn't come until we let it. You don't have to face it alone, she scoffed, her bitter laughter echoing through the ruined landscape. You think you can change me? You think you can fix this? Her hands curled into fists, the last remnants of her control slipping away. You can't, no one can. I stepped forward, closing the gap between us. I can, I said firmly, and I will for the first time. Riven hesitated. Her eyes met mine, a flicker of something uncertain in them. But it was gone almost as quickly as it appeared, replaced by the familiar coldness that had kept her moving forward for so long. Then you're just as foolish as I was, she muttered, her shoulders sagging as if the fight had drained out of her completely. Go ahead, Mia, save me, I dare you. But I didn't move. Instead, I turned toward West and Cassian. We can't stay here. Not with the remnants of that storm still, lingering in the air. We need to regroup, figure out what's next. Cassian nodded, his eyes never leaving Riven. She's not going to give up. Not like this. We don't need her to, I said, my voice steady. We need to focus on what comes next. What's still out there? West raised an eyebrow, his eyes shifting to the horizon. And what exactly is that? I could feel it then. A shift in the air. About Nithemate. The quiet before the next wave of chaos. The feeling that this wasn't over, not by a long shot. Whatever had driven Riven to this point, it wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of something much worse. We'll find out soon enough, I said, turning away from Riven. But for now, we need to prepare. Because the real storm is still coming. The sound of footsteps broke the tension before it could grow, and we both turned to see Cassian standing in the doorway, his expression dark, his brow furrowed with concern. I thought I heard you two talking, he said, glancing between us. How's she holding up? Riven didn't answer right away, instead looking down at the floor for a moment, her fingers clenched into tight fists at her sides. It was clear that even she didn't fully understand what was happening to her. I'm fine, she said at last, but her voice lacked conviction, just a little tired. I exchanged a glance with Cassian, who looked unconvinced, his eyes darkened with worry, but he didn't press further. Instead, he stepped into the room, moving closer to Riven with the same careful, cautious steps that I had learned to take around her in recent days. The storm was never far from her, always lurking, always testing her resolve. Cassian placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch steady, grounding her. We need to prepare for what's coming, he said quietly. The storm isn't done with us, it never will be. I nodded, the weight of his words sinking in. We had won a battle, but the war was far from over. And Riven, she was both the weapon and the battleground. She would have to face the storm day after day, until the day it consumed her or she finally found a way to master it. Then let's make sure we're ready, I said, trying to steady my own racing heart. Whatever comes next, we face it together. Riven didn't speak, but the faintest flicker of something hope perhaps passed across her face. It was a fleeting moment, but it was enough. It was enough to remind me that no matter what, we would keep fighting. For her, for all of us. This isn't just my storm anymore, she said softly. It's ours. I looked at Cassian, at West, and then back to Riven, realizing the truth of her words. This wasn't just about the city, or the fire, or even the shards of glass Wed used to try and fix everything. No, this was something deeper, something ancient. And if we didn't figure out how to stop it now, the storm wouldn't just destroy the city, it would consume us all. Chapter 38, The Burden of Salvation. The flames crackled around me like the sound of a million bones breaking. Cassian stood in the heart of the storm, his eyes gleaming with a kind of madness I'd never seen before. He wasn't just inhuman anymore, he was a force. A living, breathing storm with a will to burn the world down to its barest, most primal ashes. I had no idea how I was still standing. West's grip was iron around my wrist, pulling me forward, dragging me through the chaos. The fire didn't touch us. But the heat was like a fever, making everything feel like it was on the verge of collapse. Behind me, Riven's scream echoed. Not a scream of fear, but of rage. I didn't know if she was alive. I didn't know if I'd see her again, but I had to keep moving. Moo, Mia, West shouted over the roar of the flames. We can't fight him here. We need to get closer. I wasn't sure I agreed with him. Every part of me wanted to run, to escape, to turn and never look back. But that wasn't an option anymore. Cassian's voice cut through the fire, smooth and deadly. You think you can stop me, Mia? You think you can fix what you broke? His laugh was like a whip cracking in the night, the sound sending chills down my spine. You never could fix anything, he continued, stepping forward. The flames shifted with him, obeying his every movement. You left me here to die, to burn. And now I'm going to make you watch the world burn with me. I stopped dead in my tracks. My chest ached with the truth of his words. He had a point. I had left him. I had turned my back on him when he needed me the most, and now the flames were a reflection of the broken promises we'd both made. I can't fix this. The thought twisted like a knife, but then from somewhere deep inside me a flicker of something alive, ignited. No. I couldn't fix the past, but maybe, just maybe, I could save what was left. Cassian raised his hands once more, summoning the flames into a violent swirl of molten energy, the air growing thick with the suffocating weight of his rage. He was drawing on everything now, the city, the ashes of the forgotten. The fear of everyone who had ever fallen under his spell. But there was one thing he hadn't counted on. "You're wrong," I said, my voice barely audible above the roar. He stopped, and for a brief moment we stood in a tense silence. The world held its breath. "I can fix this," I continued louder this time. "But not the way you think." His golden eyes locked onto mine, and for the briefest moment I saw something flicker in them. Not madness, but something else. Something old, something familiar. Before I could process it, he moved. The flame shot toward me in a flash of heat and light, a tidal wave of destruction. I didn't hesitate. I ran west, and I moved as one, twisting and dodging through the debris as the fire chased us. We were heading straight for the center of the chaos now, toward Cassian. But something was off. I could feel it in the air, the pressure, the distortion. Cassian wasn't just using the fire anymore. He was becoming it. I reached into the depths of my pocket and pulled out the one thing I still had, the shard of glass seeds stolen from his forgotten altar all those months ago. It was cold in my hand, silent, but I could feel it vibrating, humming in time with the heartbeat of the city. "West," I called, trying to keep my voice steady. He glanced at me, confusion flashing in his eyes. "I know what we need to do," I said, almost breathless, feeling the weight of the shard settle against my palm. He frowned, but there was something else in his gaze, something that said he trusted me. "You're going to have to trust me," I said, meeting his eyes. "We end this now." He didn't argue. He didn't have to. We both knew it was time. I moved forward, stepping into the heart of the flames, and then, all at once, everything went still. Cassian froze in place, his golden eyes flickering with confusion. For a moment, I could have sworn I saw a shadow of the man he used to be, the one I had known, the one I had loved, and that was when I struck with everything I had left. I threw the shard of glass into the heart of the fire. It didn't shatter. Instead, it absorbed the flames, sucking the heat out of the air like it was drinking the fire itself. Cassian's eyes widened. "No," he whispered, his voice barely audible. You can't." The fire died. The shockwave hit me a second later. It wasn't the blast I was expecting. It wasn't the sound of flames being doused or extinguished. It was silence. For the first time in what felt like forever, the world was still. West gave me a long, searching look but said nothing more. He turned and walked ahead, leaving me with my thoughts. Cassian stayed by my side, his presence a steady anchor in the storm of my mind. He didn't speak, but his hand brushed mine again, as if to remind me that he was there. That we were still standing together. I couldn't afford to be distracted. The storm was coming, and I had to be ready. There was a sense of urgency growing in me, an instinct that told me we had little time. I glanced at Cassian. "We need to find out what's causing it. Whatever Driven was a part of, we need to break it before it breaks us." Cassian's eyes met mine, and in that moment I saw the determination in him, the same fierce resolve that had brought us this far. He nodded, his jaw set. "I'll find out. I'll track the source. We'll figure out where it's coming from." I looked back to the horizon, to the dark expanse that seemed to stretch on forever. Something was stirring out there, something ancient and powerful. It was beyond Riven, beyond any of us, but it was coming, and we had no choice but to face it. "We'll need help," I said, more to myself than to anyone else. "We can't do this alone." Cassian nodded. "Agreed, but we have to be careful. Trust doesn't come easy anymore." I turned toward the group, my gaze settling on Riven again. She was still watching us, silent observer to our plans. I could feel her eyes on me, watching, waiting for something. But what forgiveness, redemption, or just another opportunity to destroy? We couldn't waste time, not on her, and not on any of the doubts swirling in my head. I took a deep breath and straightened my back, preparing myself for what was to come. "West," I called, my voice firm, "let's move out. We'll scout the area, see what we can find. We're not waiting any longer." West didn't hesitate. "You got it," he said, his tone steely. "I'll take point." As we moved forward, the wind picked up again, carrying with it the scent of rain. A storm was brewing on the horizon, not the one we'd faced, but something far worse. We had no idea what we were truly up against, but one thing was certain. This was only the beginning. The real storm was still coming, and when it hit, we would be ready. Riven's eyes were glowing with the same eerie green light that pulsed from the altar, and the storm around us seemed to quiet. Just for a moment, she stood tall, no longer trembling, but filled with an overwhelming sense of power, power that I knew, deep down, had always been hers. "You will not control me," she said, her voice unwavering. "I was never meant to serve the storm. I was meant to destroy it." The figure recoiled as though Riven's words had struck it like a blow. The air around us crackled with energy, and the storm outside roared louder, as if reacting to the power being unleashed. The ground trembled beneath our feet, and the walls seemed to shudder with the force of what was happening. "You are not the first to try," the figure said, its voice seething with anger, "but you will be the last." Riven took a step forward, her hands raised as if commanding the very elements. "I don't need to fight you. I just need to break the curse." And with that, she thrust her hands forward, and the chamber erupted in light. The ground beneath us split open, the altar shattering as the dark mist poured from it in waves. The storm roared with fury, but there was something else, a crackling energy, bright and sharp, filling the air. It felt like everything was tearing apart, like the fabric of reality itself was unraveling. And then, as quickly as it had begun, it stopped. I gasped for breath, the weight of the figure's power gone. The chamber was silent, the storm outside nothing more than a whisper in the distance. Riven stood there, panting, her eyes dimming, the green glow fading. Did we win?" Cassian asked, his voice shaky. Riven looked down at her hands, her fingers trembling. I think I broke it, but the storm will never fully die. It's part of me now. Part of what I am." We stood there in the stillness, not knowing what the future would hold, but one thing was certain: Riven had destroyed the curse, for now. But the storm, it would always be a part of her. The film, this cast in this scarce? Chapter 29: The Monster They Built. The first soldier lunged, and it was over before he even touched me. A flick of my wrist, a surge of something inside me, and he flew backwards like a rag doll, slamming into the far wall with a sickening crack. The others hesitated, only for a second. But it was enough for me to know they were scared. Good. West was shouting behind me, but it sounded like it was coming from underwater, muffled, distant. All I could hear was the rush of blood in my ears. All I could feel was power, thick and electric, weaving through my veins like a living thing. It didn't hurt. It didn't even feel foreign. It felt like breathing. Another soldier raised his rifle. Instinct took over. The air shimmered, a ripple, invisible but devastating, and the gun melted in his hands, warping like plastic in a fire. He screamed. I didn't even flinch. West stumbled toward me, grabbing my arm. "Mia, you have to stop." I turned to him, my vision sharpened, colors too bright, edges too crisp. West's face was flushed with panic, his hand trembling on my arm. "You're hurting them," he said. I smiled, slow, deliberate. "Good." It scared him. I could see it, but he didn't let go, not yet. The squad regrouped, forming a perimeter, barking orders through their headsets. Target hostile, execute suppression protocol. A heavy metallic sound echoed through the hall, and then I saw it. They weren't just here to capture me. They were here to destroy me. Out of the smoke, a mechanical behemoth stepped forward, twice the size of any man, its arms bristling with weapons, an experimental unit, anti-mutant tech, designed specifically for things like me. Sabrina's laughter rang out weakly from the corner. "Good luck, darling," she croaked. "You're gonna need it." The mech powered up, targeting systems locking onto me with a high-pitched whine. For a moment, I faltered. Doubt flickered. Could I really fight something like that? Could I even survive it? West saw it, saw the hesitation. And for the first time, he didn't beg me to stop. He just squeezed my hand, once fierce and sure. "I'm with you," he said. "Whatever you choose." I turned back to the machine, power coiling inside me tighter, sharper. This wasn't a battle anymore. It was a declaration. They wanted a monster. I would show them one. The floor cracked under my feet as I surged forward. Faster than the human eye could track, the mech fired. A blast of blue-white energy screamed toward me. I caught it in my hand, held it, absorbed it, and smiled. The mech hesitated. Just for a fraction of a second, it was enough. I threw the energy back, magnified, twisted into something unnatural. The explosion ripped through the hall, shredding the walls, throwing soldiers to the ground like leaves in a storm. When the smoke cleared, the mech was a smoldering ruin, and I was still standing, breathing hard, alive, more than alive. The remaining soldiers dropped their weapons. Some ran. Smart West came to stand beside me, his chest heaving. "You're not human," he said, voice raw. I met his gaze unflinching. Not completely, I agreed. He studied me for a long, painful moment. Then he nodded. Good, because something bigger was coming. Something worse, and they were going to need every monster they could get. The door suddenly burst open, and I whirled around, my heart leaping into my throat. West was already on his feet, his hand reaching for the gun he kept hidden beneath his jacket. But it wasn't the guards, it was something worse. Sabrina's voice, cool, collected, and filled with menace, filled the room. I told you, Mia, she said, stepping into the dim light. I always know when you're coming for me. I froze, every muscle in my body tense with fear and rage. How had she found us so quickly? We hadn't even been here long enough for the security systems to pick up our location. West's voice was sharp. What do you want from her, Sabrina? You've already won. Just leave us the hell alone. Sabrina smiled, a wicked, predatory grin that made my stomach churn. Oh, West, you still don't get it, do you? She stepped forward, her heels clicking against the floor. This isn't about winning, it's about control. It always has been. Mia's mother, she and I, we have unfinished business. And you, she turned to me with cold eyes. You were the key to it all. Everything snapped into place. Sabrina wasn't after me just because I had crossed her. No, she needed me. Needed me for something I wasn't yet ready to understand, and if she was willing to come after me like this, I was in deeper than I'd ever thought possible. But I wasn't about to let her win, not now. You won't get away with this, I spat, stepping forward, my fists clenched at my sides. Sabrina's smile only widened. You don't get it, do you? I already have. Chapter 46, The Awakening. The figure before us was no longer a shadow, it had become a presence, a force as ancient as the storm itself, swirling in a cloak of darkness. My heart hammered in my chest as the mist coiled around its feet like a living thing. There was something intoxicating about it, something magnetic, that tugged at the deepest parts of my soul. It wanted me to come closer, to surrender, but I knew better. What are you? I managed to whisper, though my voice barely rose above the sound of the howling wind outside. The figure's eyes, piercing, glowing with a malefic green light, shifted toward me. I could feel them burrowing into my very soul, peeling away layers of fear and doubt. Its voice echoed in the chamber, vibrating through the air as though it were not speaking to us, but to something far older. I am the storm, it said, its voice rumbling like thunder, the words resonating deep within me. I am the curse that binds this land, the one that waits for the rightful heir to awaken it. The words hit me like a slap, sharp and cold. The rightful heir. Riven, Cassian murmured, his voice tight with realization. This has something to do with you. Riven stood frozen, her eyes wide as the figure's gaze fell upon her. She didn't speak, didn't even move, her expression one of helplessness, like she was being drawn into the very storm itself. You are the heir, aren't you? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, though the truth of it was sinking in. The curse, the storm, everything. It had all been tied to her. Riven's lips trembled as she met my gaze, but it wasn't just fear in her eyes, it was something far darker. Something regretful. I didn't want it, she said, her voice breaking. I never wanted it, but the bloodline, it was always destined to return. The figure laughed, low, cruel, and filled with centuries of bitterness. It wasn't mocking us, it was mocking the world itself. She doesn't have a choice, child. None of you do. The storm has chosen. The curse cannot be undone. Not without sacrifice. I turned to Riven, her pain bleeding into me. I could feel her struggle, her torment. She was caught between two forces, two realities, and both wanted her to choose. But this was never a choice, this was fate, twisted and unforgiving. What sacrifice? Cassian asked, his voice cold and defiant, but there was a flicker of fear in his eyes. He had always been the protector, the one who would stand between us and whatever dangers we faced. But now even his strength seemed to falter. The figure lifted its hand, a dark energy pulsing from its fingertips. The sacrifice will be the price for freedom, and that freedom will come at a cost far greater than your lives. It will demand your souls. Riven's face crumpled, as if the weight of the world had just fallen on her shoulders. No, she whispered, shaking her head, but the figure only smiled, a twisted, cruel curl of its lips. Everything has a price, little heir, it said, its voice deepening. And you are the key. You are the end and the beginning. Suddenly, the room seemed to shrink. The walls closed in, the air growing thick with an oppressive force. I could feel it, the power building, swelling as the storm outside intensified. I had never felt anything like it before. It was as though the very essence of the world was being twisted, stretched to its limits. "Get away from her," I shouted, stepping forward without thinking. My body moved on its own, propelled by a mixture of desperation and anger. I had no plan. I had no strategy. I just knew that I couldn't let this thing have her, but the figure's hand shot out faster than I could react. It grabbed me by the throat, lifting me off the ground effortlessly. The world spun, and I struggled to breathe as its power suffocated me. "You will all kneel before the storm," it said, its voice cold and final. "Or be consumed by it," I gasped, clawing at the hand around my neck. But it was no use. I couldn't fight this power. I couldn't stop Riven's voice pierced the air louder than the storm itself. The words seemed to vibrate through the very walls of the chamber. The figure paused, its grip loosening just enough for me to breathe, though I still felt its oppressive weight on my chest. The silence that followed was heavy, oppressive. We stood there, the weight of our situation sinking in. I wanted to fight, to find some way to save her, but deep down, I knew that what she had said was true. The storm would never leave her. And that would be the price she had to pay for her freedom. But maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to live with it, to make peace with it. For now, that would have to be enough. Chapter 49, Echoes of the Storm. The night seemed heavier now, the shadows pressing in closer, as though the very darkness around us had a mind of its own. The storm had faded, but its echo remained, a lingering presence in the air, a whisper beneath every gust of wind, and Riven carried it all within her, the weight of something ancient, something that would never truly release its grip. I watched her from across the room, her back turned toward me as she stared out the window, the moonlight casting a soft glow on her pale face. There was a quiet sadness in the way she stood, like she was lost somewhere far beyond us, trapped between the woman she had been and the force that had become part of her. I couldn't understand it. I couldn't understand how she could still stand, how she could still breathe, knowing that the storm, this relentless, consuming storm, was now intertwined with her very soul. But she was standing, wasn't she? And that was something. "Riven," I said softly, stepping toward her. My voice seemed to vibrate in the silence, fragile against the weight of what we were facing. "We need to figure out what to do next." Her head tilted slightly, as if she hadn't heard me at first. Then she turned slowly, and when our eyes met, I saw something in them, something dangerous, something that had taken root the moment the storm had bonded with her. "I already know what I have to do," she said quietly, her voice steady but cold. "I have to learn to control it. I have to make sure it doesn't control me." I swallowed hard, feeling a knot tightened in my throat. "Riven, this isn't something you can just control. It's not just magic, it's a curse. A living force. You can't handle it alone." She gave me a look, one that said she didn't need to hear that right now. A look that said she had already made up her mind, and there was no room for discussion. "I know what I'm doing," she said, her voice calm but with a sharp edge to it. "I've spent my whole life fighting storms, fighting for control, fighting for a future that's mine. The curse doesn't define me. I won't let it," but there was something in her words that didn't sit right. The storm wasn't just a force that could be resisted. It had become her shadow, a part of her very existence. And shadows had a way of overtaking everything in their path if they weren't held at bay. "I can't lose you," I murmured, the words slipping out before I could stop them. "Not like this." Her expression softened, but there was a wariness in her eyes that wasn't there before. It was as if she was already fighting battles I couldn't see, carrying burdens I couldn't imagine. She walked over to where I stood, her steps slow, deliberate, as if she was trying to weigh the weight of every movement she made. "You won't lose me," she said quietly, reaching for my hand. Her touch was cold like ice against fire. "But I need you to trust me. I need you to let me do this." I wanted to argue, to say that this was wrong, that she couldn't face this alone. But deep down, I knew she wasn't asking for permission. She wasn't asking for me to save her. She was asking me to trust her in a way I hadn't before, to let her face this storm, whatever it was, with the strength that I knew she had within her. And maybe, just maybe, that was the hardest thing of all, trusting her to fight a battle that might consume her. I nodded slowly, though the fear in my chest was still heavy, still choking. "I trust you," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "But promise me this, Riven, promise me. You won't let it break you. Her lips twitched in the faintest of smiles, though it didn't reach her eyes. I won't break, she replied softly, but it's already trying. As she pulled away, I could feel the storm swirling around us, invisible but ever present. The quiet hum of power, like the first whisper of a rising tide. It was as though the air itself had thickened, the space between us charged with something that couldn't be seen but was impossible to ignore. Chapter 47: The Price of Freedom. The aftermath was quieter than I expected. The storm had ceased, but the air still felt thick with the weight of what had happened. The chamber, once filled with an oppressive force, now seemed almost peaceful, yet the silence was deafening. The kind of silence that spoke of something important being lost, and something even more dangerous lying just beneath the surface. I could feel the tension in the room crawling under my skin, knotting my insides. Riven stood in the center, her hands still glowing faintly with the power she had unleashed. But the glow was dimming, fading with every breath she took. She looked empty, like the light that had filled her had drained, leaving only a hollow shell of what she once was. Riven, I whispered, stepping forward cautiously. My heart twisted in my chest as I watched her, unsure of what to say, unsure of what to do. She didn't respond at first, her eyes unfocused, staring at something far away. She looked as if she were trapped in a memory, lost in a world that no longer existed. Slowly, she looked up, her expression distant, a flicker of something dark passing over her features. It's done, she said, her voice soft but steady. The curse is broken. The storm is gone, but it's not over. I frowned, stepping closer. What do you mean you just defeated it? The figure, the storm, it's all gone, isn't it? Her eyes met mine, and for the first time I saw the weight of her burden clearly, the shadows. Under her eyes, the flicker of fear that danced behind her gaze. It's that mext, mitz, mekt, mexpe, mektith. It was as if she were looking at a future she had no control over, one that was slowly creeping toward her, inevitable and cruel. I didn't just break the curse, she said, her voice low. I became it. I didn't understand what she meant at first. My mind raced, trying to piece together the fragments of her words, but all I could do was stare at her in shock. What are you saying? Cassian's voice was tense, his eyes darting between us. Riven, you can't. But she held up her hand, silencing him. The storm didn't just want an heir to carry its curse. It wanted a vessel, a forever vessel. The curse can't die, not completely, not until someone carries it. And now that person is me. Her words hung in the air, thick with the gravity of what she was saying. Riven, no, I breathed, my chest tightening with the realization. You can't be serious. You've already sacrificed enough. I didn't have a choice, she said, her eyes beginning to darken again, the faint green glow returning around her hands. The curse has bonded to me, to my very being. The storm is a part of me now, and as long as I live, it will live inside me. I can't escape it, Cassian swore under his breath, his hand flying to his forehead in frustration. This isn't how it was supposed to end. This isn't how it was supposed to be. The words felt like a blow, sharp and painful, but Riven simply stood there, her face unreadable, a quiet acceptance in her eyes. It was as if she had already made peace with the fact that her life would never be the same again, that she would never be free. We can figure something out, I said, my voice more desperate than I intended. There has to be a way to know, she interrupted, shaking her head with a sad smile. There is no way out of this. The storm chose me because it knew that I would never stop fighting. I would never give up on trying to destroy it. But that's what makes me its perfect vessel. I'm the key to keeping it at bay, to stopping it from consuming everything. I felt a chill settle in my bones as I realized the enormity of what she was saying. The storm was inside her, and no matter how hard we fought, no matter how much we wanted to escape, it would always be there, lurking in the depths of her power, ready to rise again. Riven, this isn't fair, I said, my voice breaking. You shouldn't have to carry this alone. I'm not alone, she said, her voice soft but firm. Not anymore. I have you. I have Cassian. We're in this together. But the storm. She paused, glancing out into the distance, her eyes unfocused again. The storm will always be with me. I wanted to say something, anything that would make it better. That would fix everything, but I couldn't. There were no words, no promises. We were caught in a web of fate, and no matter how hard we struggled, the threads would only tighten. Is there truly no way to destroy it? Cassian asked, his voice low, almost pleading. Riven shook her head, the glow in her eyes dimming once more. It cannot be destroyed, not by force, not by magic. It's a part of the world, a part of me. Chapter 44, The Tipping Point. The sky was a sickly gray, thick with clouds that seemed to pulse with an ominous rhythm. As we moved deeper into the heart of the forest, the air became heavier, as though it was alive with the weight of unspeakable secrets. We were close, closer than I had ever dared to imagine, and with every step my unease grew. Cassian walked beside me, his eyes scanning the surroundings with a vigilance that mirrored mine. We hadn't spoken much since we left the camp, but the tension between us was palpable. We both knew that this was the point of no return. There would be no turning back after we crossed this line. I don't like this, West muttered from behind us, his voice low but laced with the same edge of warning. Feels wrong, too quiet. His words were like an echo of the thoughts that had been racing through my mind. The world around us had fallen into an unnatural stillness, the kind of silence that only came before something catastrophic. I nodded, my hand instinctively tightening around the hilt of my blade. I feel it too, but we need to keep moving. Riven was at the rear, still quiet and distant. She hadn't said much since the battle, and she seemed to be retreating into herself more with each passing moment. The flickering light in her eyes, the fire that once burned so brightly, was now dimmed by uncertainty, regret, or maybe something darker. Whatever it was, I knew it was only a matter of time before we had to face her demons, or she would face us. I glanced over my shoulder, meeting her gaze briefly. Her face was unreadable, and yet something in the depths of her eyes pulled at me. Guilt, fear, it was impossible to tell. All I knew was that she wasn't the same person who had once stood with us as an ally. We can't stay stuck in the past, Mia, Cassian said softly. As if reading my mind, you know that. We can't fix everything, especially not now. I took a breath, pushing the swirling thoughts aside. He was right. We couldn't afford to dwell on what had happened with Riven. The past was a tangled mess, but we had to focus on the present and the threat that loomed before us. We finally reached a clearing, the trees parting to reveal a massive stone structure, partially hidden by the underbrush. It was far older than anything I had ever seen, and it emanated a dark, unnatural energy that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. This was it. This was where the storm began. Cassian stepped forward, his boots crunching on the earth as he surveyed the area. His eyes narrowed and he motioned for us to follow. We need to be careful, this place feels wrong, like it's been waiting for us. I felt a shiver run down my spine. The air here was thick with something ancient, a malevolent force that seemed to pulse in time with the storm that was coming. We had uncovered the first real clue about the source of the chaos, but the truth, whatever it was, wasn't going to be easy to face. Riven spoke for the first time in hours, her voice quiet but cutting through the silence. You shouldn't be here. I turned to her, confusion written on my face. What do you mean? Riven stepped forward, her eyes scanning the structure with a mixture of wariness and something darker, recognition. This place, it's not just a relic, it's alive, and it's waiting for you. Waiting for me. I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, but inside my pulse was quickening. My mind flashed back to her cryptic warning, the one she had given me when we first met. The storm is not just a storm, it's a curse. She nodded slowly, her gaze never leaving the stone structure. You don't understand what you're dealing with. This isn't something you can fight. This is something older, and it's been waiting for someone to come along and wake it. Cassian stepped forward, his eyes sharp. We're already here, Riven. We don't have a choice. Exactly, she said softly, almost to herself. You're already too deep. Once you step inside, there's no turning back. A sense of dread washed over me, but there was no stopping now. We had come too far to turn back, and whatever this was, we needed to face it. I squared my shoulders, pushing past the uncertainty that threatened to swallow me whole. We faced worse, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, but it was enough. The others looked at me, uncertainty in their eyes, but they trusted me. I could feel their weight, their faith in me, and for the first time in days, I felt the burden of leadership fall into place. And then I saw it. In the center of the chamber stood a massive stone altar, dark as obsidian, its surface etched with symbols. I couldn't begin to comprehend. The stone seemed to pulse, as though something beneath it was alive, something ancient, something that had been buried for centuries, perhaps millennia. I froze. the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. "What is this place?" I whispered. "It's where it began," Riven said, her voice trembling, "where the storm was born." "What do you mean?" I asked, stepping closer to the altar, my eyes scanning the strange symbols carved into its surface. Riven's face was a mixture of dread and revelation. The storm is a curse, an ancient one. It was bound here to this place to keep it from spreading. But now it's waking, and when it does, it will consume everything. I didn't fully understand what she meant, but I didn't need to. The air around us was thickening, the storm's power seeping into the chamber like a living, breathing thing. The altar before us was a conduit, a gateway, and whatever was about to happen, we were on the brink of it. "Can we stop it?" Cassian asked, his voice low but urgent. Riven shook her head. "It's too late for that." Before I could react, the ground trembled beneath us, a low, rumbling sound that echoed through the chamber. I stumbled trying to catch my balance, but the shaking only grew stronger. The stone altar cracked open, a deep, jagged fissure splitting the surface. From within, a dark mist began to rise, swirling around the room like a living entity. The symbols on the altar glowed with a sickly green light, casting strange shadows that danced across the walls. "No," Riven whispered, her voice breaking. "It's too late." And then the mist thickened, and from the depths of the altar, something emerged. At first, it was just a flicker, a shadow, but as it solidified, I could see it, a figure tall and cloaked in darkness, its features hidden beneath the shadow of its hood. It stepped forward, its presence so overwhelming that it seemed to consume the very air around it. The storm outside howled in unison with its arrival, a deafening roar that rattled my bones. The figure's eyes gleamed with a malevolent light, and I knew instantly that this was no mortal creature. "This is where it ends," the figure said, its voice deep and resonant, like thunder rolling through the sky. "And where you begin." We had just crossed the point of no return. The storm was no longer just an omen. It was here. I didn't answer her. There was no time. I was already running, dodging the oncoming tendrils of darkness as they swiped toward me like claws of some ancient beast. I reached into my pocket, my fingers brushing the shard of glass I had been carrying since the beginning. It pulsed in my hand, still faintly glowing, a beacon of something I couldn't quite understand. It was the last piece of the puzzle. I held it high, feeling its warmth spread through my body like fire, but different. It wasn't the heat of destruction, but of creation. A force that could build instead of burn. "Do it now." I shouted at Cassian and West. "We can't wait any longer." Cassian's eyes widened as he realized what I was holding, the shard. He breathed, the recognition clear in his voice. "It's the key." But before I could make a move, the shadows surged again, faster this time, enveloping me in a thick, inescapable darkness. For a moment I thought I was lost. The shadows were closing in, suffocating me, and I couldn't see anything but the blackness. But then I felt the shard in my hand pulse again, stronger this time, and I understood it wasn't just a piece of glass. It was a part of her, the piece of Riven that had been torn away when she chose the darkness with everything I had. I thrust the shard toward the heart of the storm. A brilliant light erupted from the shard, cutting through the darkness, forcing the shadows to recoil. The air grew thick with energy, and I could feel the power of it, the strength of the shard as it began to push back against Riven's control. The darkness screamed, a sound that tore at my soul, but it was weakening. The shadows shrank away from the light, like roaches fleeing from the dawn. Riven screamed, her eyes wide with fury, as the shadows that had once obeyed her began to rebel. But I wasn't done yet. I pushed the shard deeper, the light intensifying as it reached its full potential. The ground cracked beneath us as the storm began to shatter. Piece by piece, Riven fell to her knees, her once powerful form crumpling as the darkness slipped from her grasp. Her breathing was ragged, and the fire in her eyes was fading, replaced by something that looked like fear. "You can't take it from me," she gasped, her voice weak, desperate. But I was already standing, the shard held high, the light growing brighter. "No," I said softly. "We're taking it back." The storm broke. Chapter 31: Ghosts in the Blood. The safe house was a crumbling mansion swallowed by ivy and fog. It sat at the edge of nowhere, broken windows like empty eyes staring into the endless dark. West pulled the SUV into the overgrown driveway, engine ticking as it cooled. No guards, no lights, no welcome party. Just the kind of dead silence that made my skin crawl. "You're sure about this?" I asked, voice low. West nodded. But there was a tension in him now, a stiffness in his jaw. His shoulders like he was bracing for something. Something bad. We got out, the gravel crunching beneath our boots. I flexed my fingers, feeling the hum of power under my skin like a second pulse. It had been growing, steadily, relentlessly, since the facility. I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep it buried, or if I even wanted to. The front door creaked open before we knocked, and there she was. Dr. Kala Riven. She was nothing like the memory I'd glimpsed. Not cold, not cruel, not cruel. She was older now, hair streaked with silver lines carved into her face from a lifetime of regret, but her eyes, sharp and storm gray, still burned with the same frightening intelligence. The kind of mind that could create a girl like me, or destroy one. "You came," she said simply. West didn't move, didn't speak. Neither did I. She stepped aside. "Come in. Before they find you inside." The mansion was worse than outside. A graveyard of broken furniture and peeling wallpaper. Dust hung in the air like mist, but beneath the decay, I saw the glint of hidden tech, scanners embedded in the walls, biometric locks disguised as antique light switches, a fortress pretending to be a ruin. We followed her into what had once been a library. Now it was a lab, crude but functional, crammed with monitors, machines humming softly. Riven gestured for me to sit. I didn't. "You were part of Project Solace," I said. A statement, not a question. "I was," she said. And I ended it. I crossed my arms. "The others said you ran because you failed." Riven smiled, bitter and tired. "They lied." She moved closer, studying me the way a scientist studies a storm about to break. "You don't know what you are yet," she said. "I know enough," I snapped. "No," she said softly, "you don't. And if you don't learn fast, you'll tear yourself apart from the inside out." A monitor flickered to life behind her, a swirling mass of light and data. It took me a second to realize what I was looking at. Not brain scans, not DNA maps, something deeper, something alive. "You think you're a weapon," Riven said, "but you're more than that." She tapped the screen. "You are the first successful hybrid, not just human and tech, not just bio-enhanced." She leaned in. "You are consciousness evolved." I stared at her. The words made no sense, and too much sense all at once. "You mean, you're not just programmed to fight," Riven said. "You are designed to become whatever you need to survive. Adaptive evolution at a cellular, neurological level." I stepped back, heart hammering. "You're saying I'm changing?" "Every second," she said. "And soon the thing inside you will stop asking for control. It would take it." I clenched my fists, nails biting into my palms. "And you can stop it." For the first time, Riven hesitated. "I can teach you to control it," she said carefully. "But you have to trust me." Trust. A poisoned word, one I'd heard too many times from people who smiled while they sharpened the knives for my back. And then West spoke. His voice broke slightly. "Mia, we don't have a choice." I turned sharply to him. Something in his face, the way he wouldn't quite meet my eyes, made my stomach drop. Before I could speak, the air around me shifted. A soft hiss, the faint click of a syringe. Pain lanced through my neck, burning, spreading. I staggered, grabbing for the tiny dart embedded just below my jaw. A tranquilizer. I whirled on West. He was already backing away, gun drawn, guilt etched deep into his features. "I'm sorry," he said hoarsely. "They have my sister." I didn't. The rest of his words blurred as the drug surged through me. Betrayal cracked through my chest, louder than gunfire. I dropped to my knees, the room spinning, the walls melting into darkness. Riven's voice, low and clinical, cut through the chaos. "Hold her down. It's starting." The last thing I saw before everything went black was West's face twisted in anguish, and then the thing inside me tore free. Chapter 40. The Shattered Mirror. The city lay in ruins, but the weight of it wasn't in the destruction. No, the true burden was the aftermath, the emptiness left in the wake of what had been and what could never be again. We had survived, yes, but now the hard part began. We had to rebuild not just the city, but everything we'd lost, everything we'd destroyed. Cassian stood at the edge of the ruins, staring out over the horizon. The fire had gone, but its scars remained. The world felt different. The air was colder, as if the heat had drained all warmth from the earth itself. I approached him slowly, the shard of glass still nestled in my palm. The pulsing light had dimmed, but it hadn't gone out completely. There was still a flicker of something inside it. And in some strange way, I knew it mirrored what was left of us. "I don't think I can ever undo what I've done," Cassian said, his voice barely above a whisper, "but I can try to make it right. I can start with you with us." I stood beside him, my eyes following his gaze across the charred remnants of the city. "We all have our demons, Cassian. But it's not about erasing the past. It's about what we do now, how we move forward." He turned to face me, his eyes dark and conflicted. "And what if we can't move forward? What if we're too broken to fix?" I reached for his hand, the shard of glass cold against my skin. "We start small, we fix what we can together." The truth was, I didn't have all the answers. I didn't know how we could rebuild. But I knew this. I wasn't doing it alone, not anymore. Cassian, for all his flaws, was still here. And so was West, his presence a steady, unshakable force at my back. But as much as I wanted to believe we could fix everything, something dark gnawed at the edges of my mind. There was an undercurrent to all this, something I hadn't fully grasped yet. The distant sound of rumbling broke the silence, and I tensed, turning my attention to the horizon. West's sharp eyes flicked toward the same direction. "It's not over. Not yet." Before I could ask him what he meant, the ground beneath us shook. Not a tremor, but a full-on quake. The air grew thick, almost suffocating, as a dark cloud rose from the depths of the ruins. Cassian stepped forward, the fire flickering in his eyes again. But this time it wasn't the same madness. It was something else, something controlled, something dangerous. "Do you feel that?" West asked, his voice low, cautious. I nodded. There was something wrong, a shift in the air that made my skin crawl. From the edge of the city, a figure emerged. The silhouette was hard to make out at first, but as it moved closer, my heart skipped in my chest. It wasn't just a figure, it was someone I thought I had left behind. Riven. I breathed. She stepped forward, her eyes gleaming with an eerie intensity. The darkness around her seemed to bend and twist, like she was channeling something far darker than what we had just faced. "You think you've won." Riven's voice was cold, filled with venom. "You think you've fixed everything. You've only just begun to understand what's coming." Cassian's jaw clenched, his fingers curling into fists. "What do you mean?" Riven smiled, but it wasn't the kind of smile I remembered. It was sharp, twisted. "You've been playing in the ashes, Mia. But there's something far worse than fire waiting for you. Something older, something stronger." Her words didn't make sense, not at first, but the more I looked at her, the more I saw how she stood, how she moved, the more I realized something had changed in her. She wasn't the Riven Aya the ID once known. She was something else. "You've let the past swallow you whole, just like Cassian did," Riven continued, her gaze flicking to him. "But I've learned how to control the storm, how to bend the shadows before I could react." Riven raised her hand, and the air around us thickened. Shadows stretched and slithered, twisting into shapes I couldn't even comprehend. They seemed to feed off the brokenness, the despair of the ruined city. "Riven," I shouted, stepping toward her. "Stop, you don't know what you're doing." But she didn't answer. She was too far gone, lost in whatever dark power she had uncovered. The shadows twisted tighter, forming into what looked like monstrous figures, their eyes glowing with a terrifying hunger. "You can't fix this," Riven said, her voice now laced with a dark power that sent chills down my spine. "You're too late. The storm is coming, and you will never be able to outrun it." Cassian stepped forward, his face hardened with resolve. "We've been through hell, Riven. We can face anything you throw at us." The shadows screeched, a sound that shook the very air around us, as if they had a life of their own, but Riven's smile only widened. Chapter 30. The thing inside me. The night swallowed us as we ran. West kept glancing over his shoulder, gun drawn, every step fueled by pure adrenaline. I didn't have to look back. I could feel them, soldiers regrouping, sirens wailing, the heavy hum of helicopters slicing through the sky. But I didn't feel fear anymore, only fire. We burst out into the open, a sprawling parking lot surrounded by dense woods. "Over there." West pointed to a black SUV with the keys dangling from the ignition like fate had just wrapped our getaway. He jumped into the driver's seat. I hesitated. For the first time, really hesitated. Something was wrong. The energy crackling under my skin hadn't faded after the fight. It had grown, louder, hungrier. It clawed at my ribs, whispered in my ear, begged me to turn back, to finish what I started, to rip, to tear, to destroy. West slammed the door open from the inside. "Mia, come on." I forced myself into the passenger seat. The moment the door slammed shut, he floored it, tires screeching, the Suo fishtailing wildly before surging onto the highway. For a while, we said nothing. Just the roar of the engine and the pounding of my heart. Then West broke the silence. "You saved us back there," he said quietly. "But something changed. I saw it in your eyes." I stared out the window. Dark trees blurred past us like ink stains. "I don't think I'm supposed to survive this," I whispered. West gripped the steering wheel tighter. "Don't say that." "I'm serious," I said. "Whatever they did to me, whatever I'm becoming, it's bigger than either of us, maybe bigger than anything." He didn't answer. Because we both knew it was true. 30 miles out, when the city lights were nothing but a memory, West pulled onto a deserted side road and cut the engine. The sudden silence roared louder than any siren. He turned to me, his face illuminated by the faint dashboard glow. "Mia, we need help," he said. "I know someone." I raised an eyebrow. "Someone who can help with." I gestured vaguely at myself this. "Maybe not fix it," he admitted, "but they can tell us what you really are." I leaned my head back against the seat. Closing my eyes, was I ready to hear it? What if the truth was worse than anything Sabrina had said? What if I wasn't just part weapon, but all weapon? What if there was nothing left to save? Still, I knew one thing. I couldn't keep fighting blind, not anymore. "Where is the someone?" I asked. West hesitated. Then he said the name Darkhala Riven. The moment he spoke it, a memory, not mine, but buried somewhere deep, flared hot behind my eyes. A woman's face, sharp, cold, brilliant. The architect of Project Solace. I snapped my head toward him. "You want me to walk into the hands of the woman who built me?" West shook his head quickly. "She didn't build you, she defected. She's the reason the project collapsed." I stared at him, trying to piece it together. "She's the only one who knows how to stop this," he said. "And if she can't?" He met my gaze steadily. "Then we burn it all down together." For a moment, I let myself believe him. Believe in us, not weapon and handler. Not monster and savior, just two broken people trying to survive this storm they couldn't outrun. I nodded once. "Okay," I said. "Let's find her somewhere." Far behind us, a new alarm wailed. Deeper, lower. A different kind of hunt had begun. And this time, they wouldn't be coming to capture me, they'd be coming to kill me. Chapter 39, the heart of the storm. The silence between us was suffocating. The fire was gone, but the weight of what we had done hung heavy in the air, pressing down on me like a storm cloud. Cassian's body trembled beneath my hand, his once vibrant golden eyes dull with exhaustion. I could feel the last remnants of his power slipping away like sand through my fingers. The flames, once so intense and consuming, had now burned themselves out, leaving only the quiet echo of what remained. "You've destroyed everything," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "All of it, gone. Just like that." I shook my head slowly. "No, you destroyed everything, Cassian. I was just trying to fix it, trying to bring you back." He flinched at my words as if the truth stung more than the fire ever could. But there was no room for lies anymore. There was only the truth. The raw, ugly truth that had been hiding beneath the surface for far too long. "You think this is over?" Cassian's voice was stronger now, but still jagged, filled with bitterness. "You think you can fix everything with a little shard of glass and a few words? The city is broken, Mia. The people. The lives you can't even see, they're lost. And you want to pretend you can save them." My heart ached at his words, but I refused to let his anger swallow me whole. "I never said I could save everyone," I said, my voice steady but carrying the weight of everything that had come before. "But I can save you," Cassian scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. "You think I'm worth saving?" I knelt down beside him, the shard of glass still in my palm, pulsing with a soft, unnatural light. It was more than just an object now. It was a part of him. A part of the fire he had become. "I don't know if I can fix everything you've done," I said softly, my fingers brushing against his as I leaned in. "But I'm going to try for us." There was a long pause. His breath came in shallow gasps, and his body shook with the weight of the truth and with the remnants of the fire that still clung to him like a second skin. And then, almost imperceptibly, he nodded. It wasn't much, but it was enough. The world outside seemed to have fallen still in the wake of the storm. The sky, once a fiery red, had shifted to a dull, smoke-filled gray. The city was in ruins, and yet, in this broken world, I found a spark of something alive. West appeared beside me, his face hard, his eyes scanning the destruction. "We've got to move," he said, his voice tight. "There's no time, this isn't over, not by a long shot." I nodded, looking back at Cassian, who had yet to rise, but something had changed in him. The fire was gone, the rage was spent, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I saw a flicker of the man he used to be, the one I had loved, the one I had lost. "It's not over," I said, my voice quiet but resolute, "but it can be. We'll rebuild. We'll make it right." Cassian didn't speak, but the way his hand closed around mine told me everything I needed to know. He didn't have all the answers. Neither did I, but together we could figure it out. And for the first time in what felt like an eternity, the possibility of redemption, of something more, flickered in the distance. The ground beneath us trembled, as if the city itself was holding its breath. I turned to rest, my mind racing with the weight of the choices ahead. What now? He looked at me, his expression unreadable. "We fight. We had a long road ahead of us, but I wasn't afraid anymore. The world was broken, but there was still time. There was still a chance to fix what had been torn apart for all of us." And for the first time since everything had started to burn, I finally believed it. Chapter 43: The Gathering Storm. The winds had changed. The air felt heavier, as if the earth itself was holding its breath. We stood at the edge of a precipice, looking out over the vast expanse of darkness stretching before us. The world was still, but I could feel the pulse of something unseen, lurking just beyond the horizon. Revan's broken words echoed in my mind as we made our way through the shattered remnants of the battlefield. The real storm is still coming. It wasn't just a threat. It was a prophecy, one I couldn't shake off. No matter how much I wanted to bury it, I couldn't escape the sense that we were on the cusp of something far worse than we'd ever encountered. Cassian's hand brushed against mine as he walked beside me. His touch was a silent reassurance, grounding me in the chaos that had consumed our lives for so long. But even his presence couldn't quell the unease swirling in my chest. He seemed to sense my thoughts, his voice low as he spoke. "We can't go back to the way things were, Mia. Not after everything we've seen, after everything she told us." I nodded, but my mind was already drifting ahead to the storm that Riven had spoken of, the storm she had warned us about, the one that was coming whether we were ready or not. I had no illusions that we could stop it. But I also knew we couldn't simply wait for it to crash down on us. "We won't," I said. My voice firm but my heart heavy. "We prepare. We don't let it catch us off guard. We're stronger than we were before." West, who had been walking ahead of us, turned around to face us. His expression was grim, the weight of his thoughts clearly pressing down on him. "Stronger, yes. But are we ready? We've barely scraped through the last storm, and that was just a taste of what's coming." The truth of his words hit me like a slap. The battle we'd just fought felt like a distant memory now, a skirmish in a much larger war. We had barely won, and even that was uncertain. If Riven was right, the storm ahead would make our previous struggles look like child's play. "So what do we do?" Cassian asked, his gaze never leaving the horizon. "We can't just sit here and wait for it to come." "No," I agreed, my fists clenched at my sides. "We find out where it's coming from. We gather what we need, we plan, and we fight." A sudden chill swept through the air, cutting through my resolve. I turned to see Riven standing in the distance, her once defiant stance now one of quiet surrender. She hadn't followed us, but she hadn't left either. She was a shadow of herself, her every movement slow, uncertain. "Is she going to stay like that?" West asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. "She doesn't have a choice," I said, my voice hard. "She's broken, and until she decides if she's going to fight with us or against us, she stays where she is." Chapter 32: Born in Ruin. The first thing I felt was hunger, not the kind you fed with food, something deeper, older, something that wanted to devour the world, just to see if it would make the emptiness inside stop aching. I opened my eyes. The ceiling above me was cracked and yellowed, but I wasn't looking at it with the same eyes anymore. Colors bled sharper, sound cracked louder. Every heartbeat in the room thrummed against my skin like a war drum, chains rattled. I glanced down. They had restrained me. Heavy, industrial cuffs bolted to the reinforced table beneath me. Cute. Across the room, Riven was adjusting some kind of monitor, her expression calm and detached, as if she were preparing a specimen for dissection. And West stood in the corner, shackled by his own guilt. He wouldn't even look at me. I let the silence stretch until it snapped. "You should have made the chains thicker," I said. My voice was wrong, smoother, sharper, like silk pulled tight over a blade. Riven turned slowly. "You're awake sooner than expected," she murmured, fascinated. She tapped the screen, my vitals spiking wildly, the reading scrolling faster than human reflexes could track. "You're stabilizing faster, too," she smiled faintly. "It's beautiful. Glad you're enjoying the show," I said. And then, just because I could, I broke the chains. The metal screamed, twisted, and snapped apart like paper. I sat up slowly, deliberately. Riven didn't flinch, neither did West, but I saw the tremor in his hands, the flicker of fear. "Good. He should be afraid. You lied," I said to Riven. "You drugged me," I said to West, "and now you're both going to pay." "Mia, listen to me," West started, voice raw. "Save it," I snapped. The lights overhead flickered, the room humming with unstable energy as whatever was inside me stretched its wings. Riven stepped forward, holding her hands up like she was approaching a feral animal. "You're not dying," she said. "You're becoming the others. They failed because they fought the change." She tilted her head. "You were made to survive it." I laughed, a low, broken sound, and what? "Become your perfect weapon." "No," she said, voice cutting through the storm. "Become free." That stopped me. Free. The word coiled around the rage burning through me, tugging it back just a little. Project Solace wasn't just about building soldiers, Riven said. It was about creating a new kind of human, one that could destroy the systems that built monsters like us. She stepped closer, gaze blazing. "You are revolution, Mia. You are retribution." A part of me, the part still bleeding from West's betrayal, wanted to tear the entire mansion apart, brick by brick. But another part listened. "What do you want from me?" I asked, voice rough. "Nothing," Riven said. "Everything," she smiled, something wild and desperate flickering through her. "I want to set you loose on the world and see what happens." The hunger inside me howled. The broken girl I had been, the soldier they tried to create, the thing they had buried inside me, all three fused into something new, something terrible, something beautiful. I stood and the world tilted on its axis. "I'll help you," I said, "but not because I trust you." I glanced at West, who flinched like I'd struck him, and definitely not because I forgive you. I smiled then. Slow, razor-edged. "I'll help you because when I'm finished, they'll wish they'd never touched me." Chapter 41, The Edge of the Abyss. The shadows twisted around us, darkening the air, closing in like a suffocating cloak. The air was thick with the scent of burning ruins, mingling with something sharper, more acrid. The storm Riven had unleashed was more than just an attack, it was a force ancient and unforgiving. I could see it now. The darkness wasn't just a weapon. It was alive. It moved with a purpose, a relentless hunger, and as the tendrils of shadow crept closer, it felt like they were probing us, seeking weakness, ready to consume everything in their path. Riven stood at the center, a cold smile on her lips, her eyes glowing like molten amber. She had become something beyond human. The power that radiated off her was overwhelming, impossible to ignore. "We've been playing by your rules long enough, Mia." Riven's voice was quiet, but it reverberated through the air like a bell tolling in a graveyard. "But there's a bigger game now, one that you won't win." I stepped forward, my heart pounding in my chest. There was no fear left in me, only a burning determination. "You've already lost, Riven," I said, my voice steady. "This isn't who you are. You don't have to do this." Riven's laugh was dark and hollow, sending a shiver down my spine. "You think I care about who I was?" She sneered. "I'm not her anymore, Mia. I'm something better, something stronger." I turned to Cassian, my eyes searching his face. His jaw was set, his fingers twitching, as if ready to summon whatever power was left inside him. The fire had been extinguished, but I could see it. The embers still flickered beneath the surface. He wasn't done yet. Cassian stepped forward, his voice low but filled with an edge of something dangerous. "This isn't you, Riven. You've let it control you. Whatever darkness you're using, it's using you." She tilted her head, her smile widening as she let out another cold laugh. "You still don't understand, do you, Cassian? It doesn't matter what's using who. What matters is that I control it now, and you're too late to stop me." As she spoke, the shadows gathered around her like a storm cloud, swirling with a deafening roar. They surged forward, crashing toward us with terrifying speed. But before I could react, Cassian stepped forward, his hands raised. A flicker of flame sparked in his palms, a weak but desperate attempt to counter the oncoming shadows. And then, it happened. The fire exploded from him in a surge of power, brighter than the sun, hotter than anything it ever felt. The shockwave knocked me back, and for a moment everything was a blur of light and heat. But even as the fire roared through the air, the shadows did not falter. They absorbed it, feeding on the flames as if they were nothing more than fuel for a never-ending hunger. Cassian's expression twisted in frustration, his body shaking from the exertion of the attack. The power he had once commanded so effortlessly was slipping through his fingers. He was trying, but it wasn't enough. Riven's laughter echoed through the air, louder now, more victorious. "You can't fight the storm, Cassian. You are the storm." I turned, my mind racing for a solution. There had to be something that could stop this madness. "West," I shouted, reaching for him. "What do we do?" He was already moving, his eyes locked on Riven with an intensity I had never seen before. "We need to separate her from the shadows. If we can break her connection to them, she'll be vulnerable." But as soon as the words left his mouth, the ground beneath us trembled again, and the shadows seemed to pulse in response. "You think you can just separate me?" Riven's voice was a snarl now, venom in every syllable. "You think you can take back what's mine?" I stepped forward, facing the churning sea, the world around me a blur of sound and color. I could feel the power growing within me, the raw energy thrumming through my veins, urging me to let go, to unleash it all, but I held back. I couldn't let the storm consume me. I had to be stronger than it. I raised my arms, and the winds responded. They twisted around me, swirling like a dance, a violent symphony of nature. The air crackled with magic, electricity sparking in the air, a storm of my own making. I closed my eyes again, focusing, centering myself, calling upon the power that was now mine to command. I spoke the words, the incantation I had learned, the one that would bind the storm to me, make it obey. But the moment the words left my lips, I felt it. The surge of energy, the wild force that refused to be tamed. It roared inside me, threatening to break free, to consume everything. I gasped, the power nearly overwhelming me. The storm inside and around me collided, and for a moment I thought I might drown in it, might lose myself in the chaos, but I refused to surrender. Control, I whispered to myself. Control, it was a fight, a battle of wills. The storm raged within me, battering against the walls I had built, clawing at the edges of my sanity. But I held firm. I focused, drawing the power into myself, holding it in place, refusing to let it consume me. And slowly, with every breath, with every ounce of strength I had left, the storm began to settle. The winds calmed, the skies lightened, the earth beneath my feet steadied. When I opened my eyes, the storm was gone. The ocean was calm once again. The air still, but I was changed. I stood there, alone in the quiet aftermath, the weight of the storm still heavy within me, but no longer a threat. I had mastered it for now, at least. Cassian approached slowly, his eyes wide with awe. He didn't speak at first, just looked at me, as if waiting for something. I turned to face him, a tired smile on my lips. "It's done," I said, my voice hoarse from the effort for now. The storm had been tamed, but I knew it wasn't over. It would always be with me, a part of who I was now. But I had learned something important. I didn't have to be afraid of it. As long as I controlled it, it would never control me. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to keep me going. Chapter 42, The Shattering Silence. The storm had dissipated, but the silence that followed was deafening. The darkness, the crushing weight that had surrounded us for so long was gone, leaving only the remnants of chaos in its wake. The ground beneath me still trembled, a reminder of the power that had been unleashed, but there was no more shadow to shield me. Riven was on her knees, trembling, her once fiery eyes dimmed and hollow. The fire that had burned in her for so long had been extinguished, and the darkness she had embraced was crumbling away. But as he stood over her, the satisfaction of victory was tempered by a sense of loss, a realization that this wasn't over, not yet. Cassian was at my side, his hand gripping my shoulder, steadying me. I could feel his pulse racing, his breath uneven, but there was something else in his eyes, a quiet sort of relief, the kind that only came after surviving a storm, but with an undercurrent of worry. "We did it," he said, his voice hoarse though it carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken words. "Did we?" I replied, my gaze still locked on Riven. The shards of shadow were dissipating around her, melting away like ink in water, but there was something unsettling in the way she didn't move, didn't speak. West stepped forward, his boots crunching against the cracked ground as he moved toward Riven, his expression unreadable. "We've only stopped one storm," he muttered, crouching beside her. "There's another one brewing, and we're not ready." I swallowed hard, his words sinking into me like cold steel. Riven may have fallen, but something in the air still felt thick with tension, like we were standing on the edge of another cliff, ready to plunge into something darker than we could imagine. Cassian, reading the same unease on my face, shifted closer. "What do we do now?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't have an answer, not yet. The silence stretched on as the three of us stood there, staring at the woman who had once been our greatest enemy. Riven's hands trembled on the ground as she slowly lifted her head, her face pale. The cruel smile that had once been so present nowhere to be found. "Why didn't you kill me?" Riven's voice was raw, empty. "You had the chance." I felt a pang in my chest, the instinct to run, to push away the haunting question. But I couldn't, not anymore. "Because we're not the monsters you think we are," I said quietly. "We've seen enough death, enough destruction. We're fighting for something more." Riven's eyes flickered. Something old and fragile, breaking through the veneer of defiance she had so carefully built. She was broken, shattered, not just by the storm, but by something deeper, something I wasn't sure she even understood herself. "You think you can save me," she whispered, the words like daggers in the air. "I was already lost before you even found me." I shook my head, my resolve hardening. "You're not lost, not yet." West stood, his back straight as he turned away from her. "She's right, Mia. We can't fix what's been broken, not like this. But we can try," I said, my voice firm, my heart beating faster as the weight of what we had just done sank in. "Wahabito, try." Riven let out a bitter laugh, her eyes hollow as she stood on shaky legs. "You're wasting your time," she spat. "The darkness isn't gone. You've only delayed the inevitable." Chapter 36: Ghosts That Bleed. The road into the blackout zone was nothing but broken glass and forgotten prayers. I stared into the darkness, feeling it breathe against my skin, heavy and electric like a living thing. Cassian was out there, and he was waiting. West paced a few feet away, muttering under his breath, glancing at me like he was afraid I'd dissolve into smoke if he blinked. Riven, of course, looked like she was thriving. Hands on her hips, boots crunching over scorched gravel, a wicked grin curving her mouth. "You're thinking too hard," she said lightly. She tossed me a battered earpiece. I caught it without looking. "Thinking gets you killed." I slid the earpiece in, ignoring her, because thinking wasn't the problem. Feeling was. The blackout zone loomed ahead, a giant wall of collapsed cities and howling wind humming with invisible frequencies meant to fry the brains of anyone too normal to survive it. But for people like me, it called, low and steady, like a heartbeat, like a homecoming. West touched my wrist, gentle, almost shy. "You don't have to go," he said. A lie, a kindness. I smiled, a brittle, broken thing. "I do, because Cassian wasn't a bomb you could just walk away from. He was gravity, and once he set his eyes on you, he never looked away." We climbed the last ridge before the black outline, where the boundary shimmered like oil on water. On the other side, the world was twisted, the air wrong, the buildings wrong, like a funhouse mirror stretched to snapping. I pulled my hood over my head, adjusting the weight of the knife tucked against my spine. One step closer, and then another. The second my foot crossed the line, the static hit. It raced up my spine, buzzing against my teeth, sparking behind my eyes. I staggered, sucking in a sharp breath. The world shifted, the colors dulled, the sky bruised black, and the screaming started. Not real screams, memory screams. Cassian's, mine, all the broken children who never made it out of this hell. Their terror painted itself across the ruins like blood on canvas. Riven didn't flinch. She just strode forward, whistling low, under her breath. West, to his credit, stayed right behind me, jaw locked tight, hands flexing at his sides. We moved deeper, winding through the ruins, and that's when I felt it, the shift, the pull. I turned just as a figure stepped out of the wreckage, tall, black, clad. Golden eyes burning in the wreck of a once beautiful face. Cassian. For a heartbeat, we just stared at each other across the divide. Two monsters who remembered what it was to be human. Two ghosts who refused to die. He smiled. Slow, shattered, hungry. You came, he said. His voice was a jagged blade wrapped in velvet, scraping over every nerve ending I had left. I knew you would, my throat closed. My legs wanted to run, to collapse, to fall into the past where he wasn't a nightmare wearing a familiar face, but I didn't move. Cassian tilted his head, studying me like a puzzle he already knew how to solve. They tried to erase me, he said. Voice low, almost tender. They tried to erase us. His hand twitched at his side, and for a terrible second, I thought he might reach for me. They failed, he whispered. Behind me, West shifted. Riven slid her knife free with a whisper of steel, but Cassian only had eyes for me. You remember, don't you? He said. He stepped closer. Soft, deadly. Tell me you remember, Little Star. The nickname hit me like a bullet to the gut. Little Star. His name for me, before the blood, before the betrayal, before I left him to rot. I opened my mouth, but before I could speak, the world exploded. A sharp, piercing whine shattered the air. Buildings collapsed in on themselves. Sirens shrieked from the far edges of the blackout zone. Cassian's eyes gleamed gold as the ground ripped open between us, jagged and screaming. Run! Riven snapped. But I was already moving, because whatever Cassian had unleashed, whatever monster he'd become, it wasn't just for me. It was for everyone, and it had already begun. I turned to face the entrance of the structure, a dark archway that seemed to pull at the very air around it. It was as if the shadows inside were alive, twisting and reaching, beckoning us to enter. The moment I stepped forward, I felt the ground beneath my feet tremble. The storm outside grew louder, a thunderous roar that shook the very earth. We had entered the heart of it all, the place where the storm had begun. Stay close, Cassian said, his voice a low command as he moved to my side. This place doesn't feel right. I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. We were about to step into the unknown, and there was no way to predict what we would find. But one thing was certain, the storm was no longer just a distant threat. It was here, and we had no choice but to face it head on. As we entered the structure, the darkness closed in around us, swallowing the light. Every step felt heavier, the air thick with an ancient power that pressed against my chest, making it hard to breathe. We're not alone, West said quietly, his voice trembling with the same fear that I felt deep inside. Fifth, and I felt deep inside. I couldn't see what he meant, but I felt it, the presence that lingered in the shadows, watching, waiting. I didn't know what it was, but I knew we had just crossed a line we couldn't uncross. This was the beginning of the end. Chapter 28. We are not the same. The room was still vibrating from the fight. Broken furniture, shattered glass, blood, ours, hers, painted the aftermath like a scene from a war zone. Sabrina lay crumpled at my feet, barely conscious, but smiling, always smiling like she knew something I didn't. Something worse. West moved toward me, his hand brushing my arm, grounding me. Come on, we have to go, he said. I wanted to. God, I wanted to, but something in me, something new, rooted me to the spot. I need answers first, I said. My voice didn't even sound like mine anymore. It sounded stronger, colder. Sabrina coughed weakly, blood dripping down her chin as she laughed. You think it ends with me? You're adorable. I crouched low, grabbing her by the collar, dragging her up so we were face to face. If you want to die fast, Sabrina, start talking. Who created me? Her eyes glinted, sharp, wild. Not who, what? I froze. What the hell does that mean? Wes's voice cut through the heavy air. Mia, don't. She'll just play you again. Maybe, maybe not. But I needed the truth. No more games, no more secrets. Sabrina grinned wider, a broken, bloodied grin. You were part of Project Solace, a program designed to create the perfect spy, the perfect soldier, the perfect monster. The world tilted. I fought to keep my balance, to keep breathing. You're lying, West said behind me. But there was fear in his voice now, fear he couldn't hide. Sabrina leaned closer, whispering. She's not human, West, not completely. She's a weapon, and you're nothing but her first casualty. I dropped her. Sabrina crumpled, laughing, even as she coughed up blood. I turned to West, my heart hammering in my ribs. You knew something, I accused. He shook his head instantly. Not this. Mia, I swear to you, but he didn't finish, because at that moment the door blew open. Armed men in black tactical gear stormed the room. A full squad, faces hidden behind helmets, guns raised. I barely had a second to react before a voice boomed through a megaphone. Mia Thorne, you are considered classified property of the United Alliance. Stand down and surrender immediately. Property, not a person. Not even a monster. Property. West grabbed my hand, instinctively ready to run, but I didn't move. Something inside me snapped. Something deep and final. They thought they owned me. They thought they could control me. That I was still some helpless girl built in a lab. No, I met West's terrified gaze. I'm done running, I said quietly, and then I turned to face the soldiers, alone. The air around me changed, buzzed, hummed like something ancient and wrong was waking up in my blood. I heard Sabrina's faint whisper behind me, almost reverent, look at you, darling. Identically becoming who you were meant to be. I stepped forward, the soldiers shouted warnings. Red laser sights dotted my chest. I raised my hands, but not to surrender. The ground shivered beneath my feet. Power, dark and raw and beautiful, surged through me like a rising tide, and for the first time, I let it. Chapter 26, Unraveling Truths. The hard drive sat on the table between us like a ticking bomb. West stared at it, his fingers itching to unlock its secrets, but I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on us. This wasn't just about data anymore, it was about survival. About getting out of this mess we'd willingly walked into. We thought we knew Sabrina, but we were wrong. The small apartment we'd retreated to was nothing more than a temporary hideaway. No windows, one door, and a single bulb flickering overhead. The kind of place that screamed anonymity. The walls, stained from years of neglect, only added to the grim atmosphere. Yet here we were, trying to make sense of everything we'd just risked our lives for. West had already connected the hard drive to his laptop, his face illuminated by the blue glow of the screen. His fingers flew over the keys, his mind clearly working at full capacity. Do you think she knows? I asked, unable to shake the paranoia. My voice felt too loud in the silence. West didn't answer immediately. He just kept typing, his eyes scanning the files that popped up one after another. His brow furrowed, and I could see the realization dawning on him. He clicked through another layer of encryption. She's been preparing for this, he muttered. His tone clipped, a knot twisted in my stomach. What does that mean? West didn't look up from the screen. It means everything we thought we knew about her is a lie. She's been a step ahead of us this entire time. I moved closer, my curiosity piqued despite the creeping dread. What do you mean? West paused, turning the laptop slightly so I could see. A series of documents and images flickered across the screen. Files about people we didn't know, deals that didn't make sense, and a familiar name. That's her, I whispered, leaning in. The picture was grainy, but there was no mistaking it. The woman standing next to Sabrina in the photo had an aura of power, her face sharp and calculating. The same cold eyes. That's your mother, West said softly, his voice tinged with disbelief. I felt the world tilt, and the room seemed to narrow in on me. No, that's not possible. I took a step back, my breath catching in my throat. My mother, the woman I thought had died years ago, was standing there, her hand on Sabrina's shoulder like they were partners, allies. I stumbled, the weight of the revelation hitting me like a freight train. Why would Sabrina be connected to her? I whispered, almost to myself. My mother. She was supposed to be gone. She never. West stood up, his voice urgent. Mia, this is bigger than you think. This isn't just about your mother. This is about Sabrina's entire operation. Your mother was involved with her from the start. They've been working together for years, and if what I'm seeing here is true, your mother might be even more dangerous than Sabrina. I shook my head, trying to push back the flood of emotions threatening to overwhelm me. This can't be real. West looked at me, his eyes softening for a moment before he spoke, his words heavy. Mia, I think your mother is the reason. Sabrina's empire is as untouchable as it is, and the reason she's been hunting you. I didn't respond. I couldn't. My mind was reeling, trying to process the information, trying to understand how. I'd been so blind for so long. I turned back to the screen, my hands trembling as I scrolled through the files. There were names, places, dates, and codes that meant nothing to me, but the one thing I could see clearly was the connection between Sabrina and my mother, a network of power, manipulation, and control that spanned far beyond anything I had ever imagined. "What does she want from me?" I whispered aloud. "Why did she drag me into this?" West's eyes met mine. "I don't know, but it's clear she's been using you as a pawn in her game from the start. And your mother, she might have been controlling the strings all along." A chill ran down my spine. The feeling of betrayal, of being a mere piece on someone else's chessboard, gnawed at me. I had been so focused on Sabrina that I had never stopped to consider my mother. A's role in all of this. She'd been gone for so long, but she'd never really left. She had been pulling the strings from the shadows, manipulating me, using me to get what she wanted. And now I had to face the truth. She wasn't the mother I remembered. She was something much darker. Chapter 50, The Eye of the Storm. The storm had grown restless. The quiet that once followed its passing was now an illusion, a calm before the chaos, and I was at its center. It had been days since I last saw a clear sky, days since the sun had broken through the veil of dark clouds that hung over us like an oppressive shroud. The storm had become more than just a presence. It was a part of me, a force that had burrowed deep inside, settled into the marrow of my bones. And every day it tugged at me, pulled me closer to the brink of losing myself. I stood at the edge of the cliff, the wind howling around me, my dark hair whipping against my face. The ocean below crashed relentlessly, the waves rising higher and higher, as if to challenge the very sky itself. My heart thundered in my chest, and yet I felt a strange peace amidst the turmoil. This was the moment, the final test. The eye of the storm was upon me, and the calm it brought was deceptive. It was only a brief respite, a lull before the real battle began. I closed my eyes, drawing a deep breath as I embraced the power within me. The storm, the magic, it was all connected to me now. I could feel its pulse beneath my skin, its fury in my blood, but it was also mine to command. It had to be, there was no turning back. A sudden gust of wind tore through the air, and I opened my eyes to see Cassian standing just a few feet away. His expression tense, his eyes met mine, dark with concern, but there was something else there, something softer, something filled with trust. "Revan," he said, his voice barely audible over the roar of the wind. "You don't have to do this. There's still time to turn back." I shook my head, a small smile tugging at my lips despite the storm's chaos. "I can't, Cassian. I don't know if I'll ever be able to go back, but I have to face it now. I have to control it, or it will control me." The words stung more than I expected. There was truth in them, undeniable truth. The storm had already marked me, changed me in ways I couldn't yet fully understand. It had shaped me, forged me in its violent winds, but I would not be its puppet, not now, not ever. Cassian stepped closer, his hand reaching for mine. His touch was warm against the cold, like a tether. I wasn't sure I wanted to hold on to. "You're not alone in this," he whispered. "We'll do this together." I stared at our intertwined fingers, the steady beat of his heart echoing through mine. And for a moment I wondered if there could be another way, if the storm could be subdued, if I could keep the balance between the girl I once was and the force that had claimed me. But the answer was already there, waiting in the depths of me. "No, Cassian," I said, my voice stronger now, more resolute. "This is my fight, my responsibility." The words came out with a finality that left no room for argument. And though I could see the sorrow in his eyes, he nodded. "I'll be here, Revan, no matter what happens." I didn't have time to respond. The storm was rising, the winds howling louder, the skies darkening once again. The eye was closing, and the fury of the storm was about to descend in full force.